Love is about learning and growing. You can't have a shared life. You're not practicing real love unless you're willing to learn and to grow. And we do that both in natural ways, spending time with one another, sharing meals together, and especially forgiving one another. But then also in spiritual ways, in praying together as a family, in worshiping God together as a family at Holy Mass. So that first lesson, it's about the fact that God is from all eternity, a shared life, a communion, and that God incorporates us into this shared life. And we build it with one another. The second lesson, I've always been interested in, stories of people's births when you're with a family. I don't remember so many things from when I was very young. It seems like my brother remembers everything. I've got basically one memory from before kindergarten. That's it. And that was when my brother was born. I don't remember my brother being born. What I remember is that my Grandma and Grandpa Miller took me out while Mom and Dad are at the hospital. And I remember that they bought me a Stormtrooper toy. And I remember coming back to the hospital, and in my childishness, I think I was more excited about that Stormtrooper than I was about the birth of my little brother. I know better now. But those are interesting, and it's not a bad thing to begin this lesson, by sharing a story about a birth. Either your own, one of your children's story from the birth of one of your children. Maybe your mom and dad have a story to share about when you were born. But the verse we're going to start with here is from the Gospel of Matthew. From the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 28, verses 19 to 20. This is after Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection. This is the conclusion, the last moments that he's speaking to his disciples face to face, the last moments before he ascends to heaven. And he says this. He says, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all I've commanded you." In a way, this whole month, all of the lessons are about the mystery of the Holy Trinity. And this isn't a big transition from our theology of God down to the theology of the sacraments. They're tied in together intimately. This lesson, week 2, the blue lesson, it is about our baptism, and in particular the way that the baptism is the means by which we take part in the shared life of God. Imagine, the lesson begins by asking your kids to imagine what it would be like if you went for a week without electricity. Even your car that runs on gas, if the battery's dead, your car isn't going to start. But your refrigerator, dishwasher, can't do the laundry at home without it, lots of kids' toys, the radio, the TV, none of them work without the power to make them work. And while the Holy Spirit is a person, it's the Holy Spirit that gives life, that gives power to our life as a Christian. And it begins with our baptism. Now, 1 Corinthians 6:19 says that you are a temple of the Holy Spirit. How does that happen? When does that begin? It begins in the moment of your baptism. At Pentecost, when God poured out the Holy Spirit on the people, when God revealed fully the mystery of the Trinity, it was the Holy Spirit who moved St. Peter to preach the gospel. It was the Holy Spirit who was at work in people's hearts to really hear, to listen, and to let those words go deep. And it was the Holy Spirit that brought about conversions of heart. And the Holy Spirit fills these people. The Holy Spirit makes of us a temple, and the Holy Spirit fills us with tremendous gifts. The activity for this lesson, it starts out white. These are usually color-coded. It starts out white, but we're going to color it. And so one sheet, it is just a blank with some waves on it representing water, and you're going to fold that in half so that it stands up. And then otherwise, on the other sheet, there are a bunch of droplets, and we're going to have you cut out the droplets, color them, along with these down at the bottom. And all of these refer to graces that we receive at baptism. And there's kind of two activities. There's a demonstration in the activity, in this activity. The demonstration asks you to have a glass of a large glass of water, maybe a mason jar, and then a smaller glass, maybe a measuring cup, like a quarter cup. And then as you describe these particular graces that we're filled with at our baptism, you pour that water, the measuring cup, say, into the mason jar or the larger glass. And you want to practice this ahead of time, but the idea is by the time that you get all of these gifts, that it's overflowing. We want there to be more water, because there are more gifts than can even be contained in a human soul through the graces of baptism. Down below, though, in addition, there is a droplet that you paste on the sheet along with all of those gifts, a droplet for every member of your family. And it says, I am baptized, name and date. Now, you might have to do a little bit of digging to find your child's date of baptism. It might be even more difficult to find your own. I'd encourage you, though, if you don't know the date of your baptism, you can contact the church where you're baptized, and they can look it up actually pretty easy. But if you want to carry this out before you get a chance to do so, you can write down on the date, you can write down TBD. Not to be determined, but rather to be discovered. The date of my baptism is to be discovered, but we want to encourage you to discover the date of your baptism. For all of the gifts that you receive in baptism, the most significant is that's when you were born into a shared life with God. That's when you were born into, not this world, but born into the kingdom. It mentions, this lesson, the the gifts of the Holy Spirit, although the third lesson is going to focus on those. But the conclusion of the lesson asks that you focus on the ways that the Holy Spirit, who animates the Christian life, like electricity animates all of our appliances and devices. The Holy Spirit animates the Christian life. And so that we can grow in holiness, so that we can become more and more a part of that shared life